Okay, so 9 a.m. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the third session of our monthly webinar series. For introductions, my name is Zohra Jaffer, and I am the Trade and Development Officer at the Consulate General of Pakistan in Toronto. And one of our goals here is to inform and facilitate trade for our Pakistani businesses and entrepreneurs. And today we are very excited to host this session in collaboration with KPMG Law Canada. And inshallah, we'll be exploring the Canadian Startup Program. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest speaker today, Zohra Jaffer, who is a partner in KPMG Law LLP's corporate immigration practice. Zora has over 12 years of experience in Canadian immigration, and she provides expert advice to companies across various industries, including IT and financial services. She also leads the Canadian startup visa practice and has litigated significant cases related to this program. Zora specializes in strategic immigration advice, helping clients attract top talent and also navigate Canadian immigration regulations. And she is an active publisher and contributor on relevant immigration matters such as the startup visa program, Canadian PR, and permanent Canadian permanent residence and spousal sponsorship. So I'm very glad and thankful for Zora for taking the time today here and to take and for taking us through the Canadian Startup Visa Program. And before I pass the floor to her, just a disclaimer. This session will be recorded and you all will be provided the session recording link. And for any questions that come up, please use our chat option to write in all your questions. And inshallah, we'll be going through all the questions towards the end and we'll try our best to answer all the questions today. So without further ado, Zora, I'll pass the floor to you to kick this off.
Okay, thank you so much, Salams, everybody. It's great to be here. As Zohaib said, I am an immigration lawyer with KPMG, and I do support multinational corporations as well as startups who are looking to come to Canada to launch their business. So, you know, just thought that we could go through a little presentation that I've prepared with the help of my colleague Amira, who's also on the line as well. And we'll chat through, you know, some of the ways that you're able to come to Canada, what some of the immigration options might be for you. And as I mentioned, you know, you can certainly put questions in the chat, but we will, you know, have some time at the end as well to run through questions that you may have. If you're not able to get your question answered, feel free to reach out to myself later on. And, you know, I'm happy to have further discussions with each of you on your Canadian immigration questions. Okay. So I am going to pull up a slide deck and we'll go from there. So just give me a quick second here. Okay, is everybody able to see the screen there?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, I'm just gonna move that. Wonderful. We're all good. Everybody can see. Yep. Okay. All right. So I'll give you a little bit of information about the Startup Visa Program. I'm sure some of you have heard about it and you know, are interested in the Startup Visa Program. So definitely will walk you all through that. And then I'm happy to chat through some of the alternatives if the Startup Visa Program maybe isn't the right program for you. And then just a little bit on how we can help and what KPMG can do to assist you as you make your way through your goals and what your program is. Did the slide deck change? Just trying to see what you guys can see. Do you guys see, what is the startup visa program, or do you still see the intro slide?
I see the first slide, Webinar Canadian, and
Mhm.
I'm not seeing it on the slideshow view, if that's what you have.
Yeah, okay, let me see. Let me try it a different way here.
Mhm.
Is that better? Can you see it on the screen now? Yeah, wonderful.
Perfect. We're seeing slide 3, if that's what you intended.
Yeah, okay, so it's
Okay.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Slide, here we go. I can put it back there. So that's just kind of the intro slide. These are the agenda points about the program, the alternative pathways, and then how KPMG can help. So just quickly going through the Startup Visa program and what it is. So it is a program that was designed by the Canadian government to help foreign entrepreneurs establish a business in Canada. Now, we do say the word startup, but oftentimes a lot of people who use these programs are people who are successful outside of Canada. They have a business outside of Canada and they're looking to expand. But it is absolutely possible for somebody to start their first business within Canada. And you're looking to establish anywhere outside of Quebec. The startup visa program is not available in the province of Quebec, but any other province and territory certainly is available. And there's really three main requirements. So you have to be innovative. And what that means is very subjective. There's no clear definition for what it means to be innovative. Typically, what we find is that it does have some level of technology. You're doing something that's different from what your competitors are doing. You're really not doing exactly what, the person next to you is doing. Okay. And you're typically leveraging technology as a differentiator. You have to create jobs for Canadians. So it's not enough that you're going to be working on your business. You also have to create jobs for Canadians. That is a requirement. And you have to be able to compete on a global scale. So they're looking for businesses that have kind of that international business mindset, who are looking to do work on a global scale. So that's really your, what the three targets are for the program, what you really need to have to launch a business. Now, what are the requirements? You have to have a qualifying business. So what that means is, you have to have a business where each founder owns at least 10% of the voting shares, and all of the founders plus the designated organization need to own at least 50%. So you and your founders can't own a minority share of the business, okay? And we can chat on those specifics later, not a problem. The biggest thing about the Startup Visa program is you can't just apply. You have to have a letter of support from a designated organization. And what the designated organizations are organizations that have been approved by the Canadian government, because the Canadian government understands that their job is really the immigration side. They don't have the experience or expertise to really vet a business and say who might be successful. So they have given this task to a designated organization. The designated organization will do due diligence. They will determine whether they think you have a chance of success in Canada. And there's three types of designated organizations. We have an incubator, we have angel investors, and we have VCs. So those are each one have their own sets of requirements in terms of what they look at in order to support a business. And once they've determined that they will support a business, they will issue a letter of support. That one letter of support is good for permanent residence and your work permit. When you apply under this program, you do need to meet language requirements, but the language requirements are lower than what you would find in other permanent residence programs. So the standard permanent residence program in Canada requires a benchmark language of 7, but under the Startup Visa program, your benchmark is 5, so it is much lower, okay? And you need to bring enough money to settle in Canada. So there's two aspects to that, and we'll chat on it a bit further, but you have to have enough money personally so that you can survive in Canada, And you need to show your investment funds. If you're planning to invest in your business in Canada, you have to show that you have the funds available to do so. So the great thing about the Startup Visa program is that it's a great pathway to establish a Canadian business. It is a permanent residence program. So in other countries, they had startup programs, but they are work permit, they are temporary programs. They are connected to the success of your business. The Startup Visa program is a permanent residence program, and it does, once you become a permanent resident of Canada, in the event that your business fails or you want to pivot, you're certainly free to do so. There is, an understanding on the part of the Canadian government that that not all startups are going to be successful. Now, you are able to obtain a work permit, and it's an open work permit for a period of 3 years, and that is to help you launch your business in Canada while your permanent residence is in process. Now, this pro is also very much connected to one of the cons of the Startup Visa program. And one of the cons is that the processing times are quite high. You are looking at about a 3-year processing time for your permanent residence to be processed. So that's why you have the option of the open work permit. So you can come here, you can work, you can get things going while your permanent residence is being processed. Now, we are seeing a decline in the processing time, so it is coming down, but just need to be mindful from a planning perspective that, you are looking at, an extensive period of time until your permanent residence is in hand. The other great thing about the designated organizations and the incubators, the angels, is that they're very much invested in supporting the businesses. So rather than coming here and not knowing anybody and really having to start from scratch, a lot of the connections that you may need will come through your designated organization. There are no specific industries that are limited from the Startup Visa program, which is great. There are other, provincial programs and permanent residence programs in Canada where certain industries might be excluded, such as real estate, things like that. Whereas in the Startup Visa program, we're not limited to any specific industry. The other great thing about the Startup Visa program is your family can accompany you. So when the primary applicant can get a work permit, the spouse may also, the kids can get study permits up to and including high school. So, that's great. And one other thing that we should have noted here is for pro is you can have up to 5 co-founders. So that makes it very attractive if you have a number of people who are founding a company and looking to come to Canada together to launch it. So again, the high processing times are, tough. We do have to deal with that. But, the open work permit does help to mitigate that. Another con is earlier this year, IRCC limited the number of letters of support that the designated organization can issue per year. So prior to this change, any designated organization could issue an unlimited amount of letters of support. So now that they can only issue 10 letters per year, the designated organizations are being much more selective in who they select to apply. So we just have to keep that in mind because that is, something that can limit the number of businesses that are going to be able to take advantage of this program. Now, the other thing is, once you apply under this program, there are regulatory requirements that have to be met. So you do need to make sure you're maintaining compliance throughout. You want to, demonstrate that you are actively establishing a business and that this isn't something that you're doing simply for the purposes of immigration, right? You genuinely want to launch a business and you have to show IRCC that you do. So just keeping that in mind, that you do need to maintain your compliance and continue to show that you're launching your business in Canada. So you can't really just be sitting back and waiting for your permanent residence before you actually take action on your business. The other thing that makes it a little bit more difficult is there's now a requirement that you receive an acknowledgement of receipt before you can apply for your work permit. They are not issued immediately, so there is some lag time between when you apply for permanent residence and when you can actually apply for your work permit. That's a new change. That wasn't something that was an issue previously, but it is a new requirement that IRCC has implemented. And the last con is that some documentation can take time to obtain. Now, you're going to need a police clearance regardless of what country or what program you're applying for permanent residence under. However, the startup visa is one of the only programs that still requires a birth certificate for the primary applicant. And I know a lot of people don't have birth certificates, so you have to take steps to try to obtain a birth certificate. Perhaps prepare an affidavit if one can't be obtained. So things like that, which are not necessarily an issue in other permanent residence programs, you do need to kind of be mindful of some of this for the startup visa program. So what are some of the key documents? You need a letter of support. That's the document that you will get from the designated organization. The designated organization will also issue a commitment certificate directly to IRCC. So it outlines everything that's in your letter of support, and it also provides IRCC with information on the due diligence that the designated organization has done on the business, why they think you're likely to be successful, what support they're going to be providing you, things like that. You do have to also complete application forms. That's just par for the course. You also want to provide your proof of education and your work experience because you want to demonstrate that you are qualified to do the work. So, your work experience and education should be related, or, we should be able to make a connection as to how you're leveraging your education and work experience. Your resume should be consistent with your forms and with the other documents that we provide as proof. And of course, you certainly need identification documents like passports, birth certificate, if you have national IDs, things like that. And then your proof of funds. This tends to be a big one. You need to have a statement from your bank which confirms the average in your bank account over the last 6 months. And that average needs to meet the cutoff for your family size. So depending on the size of your family, that's how much you're going to need to have in your bank account in the last 6 months. So you provide your statement for the last 6 months plus this letter from the bank. It has to be an official letter on bank letterhead. It has to be signed and it has to be included in your application. It also is going to have to be updated when IRCC actually starts processing your application. So you need to provide it up front, but you also need to provide an updated version of it. So sometimes it's difficult for people who provide, their bank certificate for their bank back home, but then they come to Canada and then they need to get an updated bank certificate letter. But you can only do so if you're physically in that country. So sometimes we have to juggle that and figure out the best way to get those letters. And one thing to keep in mind throughout the processing of this application is that you want to document everything that you're doing. Anything that you're doing to advance your business, you want to make note of it. We call it a progress report, and you keep it because IRCC, once they start processing your application in a year or two, they're going to ask you, what have you done? And to sit there and think about all the things you've done over the last couple of years is quite difficult. So if you document your progress over time, it's going to be a lot easier to respond to IRCC when they make this request. And just some couple of quick notes on the funds, because it does come up quite a bit, is they have to be accessible and transferable funds. So not, your car or, something that you've purchased. It has to be readily available. You have to have those funds throughout the processing of your application. And it's important to note one of the changes that have been made over the last little while are that you have to have the low income cutoff, that's a LICO. So based on the size of your family, you have to have, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. But you also need to demonstrate that you have the funds available for your investment. So there's, usually an expectation that Either you're going to raise funds or you're going to put your own funds into the business. And if you're putting your own funds into the business, you have to show that you have access to these funds. Okay. So that is startup visas. I'm happy to pause here if there are any questions that are specific to the startup visa program. Otherwise, we can certainly chat on the other two alternatives and then circle back for questions. Okay, so I think we can carry on. I don't have the number of how many Pakistani startups specifically. We have pulled some data in recent years. I'd have to take a closer look at it. We probably do have details, but I don't have them on hand. So we can come back to you, but it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter what country you're processing applications from. It's not like the US where certain businesses or certain companies will, certain countries have specific processing. It's not like that here. So just kind of respond. Sorry.
Yeah, there's Masood who raised his hand.
Sure. I think, yeah, Masood, why don't you go ahead and then I can go through the chat questions.
Thank you so much. My question was, I was a bit confused for the startup. So for this program, does the startup has to be already up and working, like there has to be some investment and there has to be some kind of proof of concept there, and then you're thinking about moving it to Canada, and in Canada you're thinking about scaling it? Is it how it works, or you need to have a business plan only and you go to Canada and then you try to raise funding over there? So
the answer is that it really depends. It depends on what the designated organization is looking for. So some designated organizations are going to be fine with not having an MVP, not having really, actually launched or started a business, whereas others are not. Others are going to require you to actually have the business at a certain point, perhaps have some sales, things like that. But from an immigration perspective, none of those are requirements. Those are all things that are really based on the designated organization and what they would require before issuing a letter of support.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So one of the questions is, I don't have a business plan. Is it possible to find a business and start and join as a partner? So technically, yes, you can certainly start you can join another company, but you have to be mindful that, you're not doing so simply for the purposes of immigration, right? Like there has to be a rationale as to why you're joining this business and what you bring to the business. We have to be careful that you're not simply looking to just do something that makes no real sense. Like for example, you don't have a finance, but you join the business as a CFO. So that you need to make sure that you have a legitimate reason and contribution for the program. Yes, absolutely. Designated organizations can ask for fees. They often do so. And since the recent changes where they're limited to only doing 10 per year, their fees have increased quite substantially. So certainly those fees are something that you need to consider. In terms of the opportunities to raise funds in Canada, that's outside of my purview as Immigration Counsel. We can, have, I can try to connect you with people who help with raising funds in Canada through KPMG, but it's just like any country. There's various avenues that would be available to raise funds. Your payments to the incubators typically do not count in the funds that are required. You have to show your proof of funds for yourself to raise your family while you're here. You also have to show the funds for the investment. Now, so the money that you pay your designated organization is not meant to be your investment funds. Those would have to be separate. I see that somebody asked about the list of organizations. Yes, they are available on the IRCC website. And I thank you, Mohammed, for providing the link. That is correct. I will chat on the MNC definition. That is not part of the startup visa program. I will address that momentarily when we talk about the intercompany transfers, and you can see it on my screen right now. So it's not a part of the startup visa program. You don't need to necessarily have knowledge of the Canadian market, but what you do need to have is a plan to get that information. So you need to be able to demonstrate that, you've thought about it, and, these are the things that you're planning to do to address the Canadian market, and sometimes your designated organization and things like that would have the information that you're looking for to really get the details needed to put into a business plan. I'm going to take questions because I have some people with hands raised, and then I can kind of go back to I'll answer the second part of the question. What are the benefits of moving your startup to Canada? I think that, again, like that's stuff that you might need to kind of look into on your end, but really people are always looking to come to Canada because, that's, got a great living conditions. There's, top universities and colleges for kids, things like that. So if you move your business, you have the opportunity to get, permanent status here in Canada. Mahtab, I see that you have raised your hand. Did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Thank you. So basically, I wanted to know that why actually we need designated organizations to provide us a letter of support. Let's say we are already running any business over here for about 10 years or so, and we want to just start up our business office over there. So is this program meant for us, or we need to just go some other way?
So we can chat about that as the presentation progresses, but you have to have an immigration pathway to come to Canada, and simply having the business back home does not give you an option to get a visa or a work permit to come to Canada. So that's why the startup visa. If you want to launch your business in Canada, but you don't want to physically come to Canada, then you don't need to do any program, right? But if you want to actually come to Canada, then you do need to have valid work authorization, which would require either a work permit or permanent residence in order for you to do so. So the startup visa is one pathway, and I'll chat on two other options for you if you don't want to go through the startup visa route, okay? Imran, you had your hand up as well here.
Yes, good morning, Zohra. Thank you, first of all, for doing this.
Absolutely.
It's going really well. What I wanted to do is maybe stop you before you jump into intercompanies and anything else, and just go back to startup and specifically what your firm and you would do for someone wishing to apply to this program. So let's say I like what I heard, I like what I saw.
Yep.
I want to apply. What happens? I reach out to KPMG,
Sure.
and take us, step by step through there before you go into the next part of your presentation.
Sure. And I mean, we've thought of this kind of for the last part, how KPMG can help, but ultimately it depends on where you are and what stage of your business you are, which will determine, our level of involvement. So we can certainly make introductions to designated organizations. If it's determined that the startup visa is the most appropriate path for you, we would then assist in, for sure, the immigration side of things. What we do is we provide you kind of, the opportunity for a holistic suite of services. So KPMG can assist with a number of things, including incorporating your business, giving you tax advice. If you have a business launched outside of Canada, we can Canadianize your employment agreements, things like that. So we'll kind of give you the option for what types of services you're looking for. And you have the option of all or none or some, or, whatever really suits you in the business at the time. So that's ultimately kind of where things go from there. From an immigration perspective, we would then assist with, doing the filings of both the work permit and the permanent residence. We continue to communicate with IRCC throughout the processing of your application, providing responses to IRCC for information that gets requested, things like that.
Okay, that's great. But if I have, I'm new to this completely.
Okay.
I've seen this presentation. I think this may be a good pathway for me. So I'm assuming I'll contact your offices. You'll vet my background and my capabilities. If you feel that I may be able to fit into startup, do you
Yep.
do any kind of, do you point me in the direction of the VCs then? So I've got to go and meet them.
Yep.
Who helps with creating the business plan, which I'm sure IRCC will probably need, or the VC would need, and so on and so forth. So I was looking for a little bit more details on that part as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I can necessarily get into on a general call, and we can chat further offline, Imran. But generally, we have a lot of connections within the organization, within the industry. So it would be really individualized, depending on who you are, where you are in your journey. It would depend on what types of intros we would make for you. So we absolutely have groups and organizations that help people kind of end to end with this process and this program, assisting with the drafting of the business plan, assisting with kind of a understanding of, do you require investments? If not, what types of groups are you looking at? So it's not a one size fits all, and it really is kind of going to depend on who you are and where things are. But we can then make the appropriate introductions as necessary, so that if you are going to do the startup visa route, you have everything that you need, so that we can prepare a strong application, but also so that you have support throughout your journey, and especially post landing, we want to make sure that you have the best opportunity to launch a successful business.
Perfect. Thank you. The end-to-end part is really what I was looking for.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
fair enough.
That's perfect. Thank you again.
Yeah, all good. So there's a question about mixing and matching funds. From IRCC's perspective, you need one designated organization to issue the letter of support. So there are groups that are both angels and VCs. So you can chat with them about what their options would look like, what that would be. But one of the entities would need to issue the letter. So what are actually the designated organization and the letter of support? So, I mean, I think I chatted on this. The designated organization can be an incubator. It can be where they would make introductions for you. They wouldn't take equity in your business. And so really they're there to help guide you and provide you with, for example, real estate space. They could make intros for you, things like that. Angels and VCs, they would provide investments, they would potentially take equity, and they would be a lot more kind of invested in your launch and growth in Canada. So it really does depend group to group, kind of, what level of support you're looking for. Do you need to incorporate before coming to Canada? No, not necessarily. However, a lot of officers will question why you haven't. And when you connect with KPMG, we can chat about this further, but you don't need to have a Canadian director. So you can technically incorporate a business while everybody is outside of Canada. So it begs the question, if you are truly looking to launch a business in Canada and you haven't even incorporated, which is considered, probably the most preliminary step, is it really a business that you are genuinely, looking to launch in Canada, or are you simply trying to do something for immigration purposes? Munir, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, let's say if we have some friends and family already residing in Canada and they have their own business, so is there any possibility that we do a partnership with them instead of going to designated organizations that are signed by the government?
So we can chat. Those are different pathways if you're not looking for the startup. So we'll address those in the next couple of slides in terms of what options might be available.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Is Canadian incorporation easy? Yeah, it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward now. Ontario, BC, like I said, you don't have to have a Canadian director. It is done, quite quickly within a day or so. So yeah. You have a company in Toronto with one director. You need to get there to move things along. We can chat. Yasser, maybe ping me offline and we can have a discussion specifically about yours, because I don't quite understand the question. Are you trying to figure out how to come to Canada? And if so, it will depend on how far ahead your business is and things like that. So let's chat. I'm more than happy to have that discussion with you, because I think there might be a couple of different pathways that we can check out for you, Yasser. Okay, so it looks like the questions have kind of slowed down. So I will go through the intercompany transfers specifically for startups. And then there will be one other path as well. And then what we will do is, I'm just going to put my email. It is at the end of this deck, but I will put my email. KPMG. Okay.
And I can also add your contact with the follow-up email where I'll be presenting
Perfect.
video link as well for any follow-ups that need to be done with you.
Yeah. So I've also put it in this chat, though. Everybody has it there as well. Okay. So the intracompany transfer is, it used to be you had a company, in Pakistan, and you're looking to expand into Canada. Super, straight, not all that straightforward, but that was kind of the requirement. Now, when you are looking to do the intercompany transfer, by its very nature, you have to have been employed with the foreign company for at least 1 year. That is a mandatory requirement. So to the point of, can I join a company and then, come to Canada through another company? Sure. If you're going to do the intercompany transfer, you have to be working for that company for at least 1 year. Okay, so that's just flagging that because the question came up. The new requirement as of last week or the week before is that you now need to be working for a year. It was always that you had to be an executive, a manager, or a specialized knowledge worker for the company outside of Canada. But what has changed is that that organization now has to have operations in at least 2 countries. So Canada cannot be your launch opportunity. It cannot be your expansion. So you have to have, Pakistan plus another country, then you can come to Canada. It cannot be Pakistan and then Canada. That no longer works. There was a question on how long does this second country's operations need to be in operation effectively. There's no clear information on that as yet. IRCC has not provided any guidance. However, you have to think about why did they make this change? They're looking to stop companies from really coming to Canada without, plans of expansion and growth. Because what they were finding, I think, is that people were coming to Canada, not really generating jobs for others, not really potentially generating a lot of revenue and therefore taxes. And then they were shutting down their home business. So they want to prevent that from happening. The intercompany transfer is meant to allow for the movement of people while the foreign companies continue to remain in operation. So if you try to say, okay, I'm doing business in Pakistan, I'm going to open up a quick Delaware company for a couple of months, and then I'm going to do Canada because now I have Delaware, United States, as my second country, it's not going to work. They're going to see through that. And the business does have to be revenue generating. So you're going to have to demonstrate that you are generating revenue. How long? I think is going to be subjective. If you're generating a couple $1,000s, I suspect that there's going to be an expectation that you've been in operations longer. If you're generating, a few $100,000, for a few months, that might be sufficient, but it's not clear from IRCC's guidance as yet. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you have to be continuously employed for at least 1 year in one of the foreign entities of the business. What was happening sometimes the foreign business was, perhaps shutting down, or they were moving that that position entirely. So what IRCC wants is they want confirmation that that individual could return back home to their home country and maintain that employment. So the company needs to confirm that, if you're going to come to Canada for a few years, in the event that you need to transfer back to Pakistan, you have that job that would remain available for you. And the last thing, which hasn't changed, is that you do need to have a qualifying relationship between the entities, between the three of them. So it can be parents and subsidiary or branch. If you're going to do an affiliate, the ownership has to be substantially the same. So the three entities would have to have the same ownership structure with substantially the same percentage of ownership. And, you know, certainly there has to be consideration for wages. So the people who are coming to Canada need to be paid salaries, which are consistent with the salaries that are being paid to Canadians. And so this will vary depending on your location. This will vary depending on the types of work that are being performed by each individual. Certainly, an executive or senior manager is going to require a higher salary than somebody coming in a specialized knowledge capacity. So we just kind of are mindful of all of that. When you are coming to Canada for through the intercompany transfer, the applications are generally they are meant to benefit from expedited processing. Which means that they should be processed in about 2 weeks or so, plus, you know, a couple of weeks for visa stamping. We do find that the intercompany transfer applications for startups tend to be a little bit longer. It does tend to be around the 1 to 3 month mark. And that's something that, you know, you just need to keep in mind from a planning perspective. There you go. So again, as I mentioned earlier, you have to be coming in either as an executive or senior management level or you have to demonstrate specialized knowledge. So when we say specialized knowledge, it means that the person coming to Canada has to have proprietary knowledge. So things that are specific to your organization. It can't just be, you know, somebody who can work for your company or the next company and it's all the same. It's all kind of generic information. It has to be stuff that is truly unique to your company, your business, your organization. And they wouldn't have developed that skill set if not for their experience working directly with your business. IRCC will allow for you to use your lawyer's address when you're initially applying. So to the question about incorporation, you would incorporate with your lawyer's address, and you can certainly use that address in the initial application. However, there is an expectation that you will be securing physical commercial premises for the Canadian enterprise. And anytime you try to file an extension or anything like that, that's something that you're going to have to demonstrate that you do have a physical office space. And I know that, you know, for IT companies, sometimes like there's no thought of ever getting an office space, but for the purposes of immigration and using this program, you do need to secure physical commercial premises. You do also have to have reasonable plans to hire staff for the new enterprise. So again, these are things that would be in any standard kind of business plan. But you have to show that you're going to have a Canadian enterprise that is large enough to support needing an executive or a manager or a specialized knowledge worker for the full duration of their work permit, right? So what do you plan to do? How do you plan to, you know, generate revenue? And then how do you plan to have enough money to support this foreign worker's salary while in Canada? And again, just like, you know, in a startup, you're going to have to provide a business plan as well as financial documentation to show that the business can support the growth of this Canadian entity. So we'll typically include things like tax documents and, you know, profit and loss statements, things like that, to show that the foreign entity can afford this expansion. And once you can demonstrate that you are providing a good or a service and you've, you know, successfully launched the business, then IRCC will assist with or will consider extensions as needed. So just to keep in mind, the intercompany transfer is a work permit category. Once you are here for a year, you can then consider express entry, which is, kind of the standard pathway for permanent residence. And while you're considering that or getting the documentation for express entry, you can look for extensions under the intercompany transfer. You can get extensions of up to 5 years as a specialized knowledge worker, or up to 7 years in an executive or management level capacity. And then the other stream that I'll just go through relatively quickly here is to do a labor market test. So generally speaking, to do a labor market test, you have to recruit for the position and demonstrate that there is no qualified Canadians. Under the global talent stream, it's recruitment exempt. So that means you don't have to do recruitment. However, in order to take advantage of this program, you typically do need to have a business that is already providing a good or a service. So somebody had asked, like, I have a Toronto director and things are and things are moving, but I need to be there as well. If you've already got a Canadian business and a director here, then you could consider using the Global Talent Stream LMIA. If you are not already providing a good or a service, or you don't have revenue generated by the Canadian business, this is not an option for you. So category A would be for, your non-IT roles. So somebody who's coming CEO, CFO, things like that, it'd be category A, and you need a referral partner. We could potentially assist in making introductions to referral partners. Category B would be really for your technical folks. So your IT positions, your IT managers, people who are going to be really doing some of the technical work or overseeing the technical people at more of a granular level. That is who would be category B. You don't need a referral partner for that. Now, in lieu of the recruitment, you have to do a labor market benefit plan, which really is just committing to things that are going to have a lasting positive impact on the Canadian labor market. Some of the things that we do, ultimately, you're trying to agree to do things that you as a business are already doing. So, for example, increasing your revenue, that's something presumably you would plan to do anyways, or hiring Canadians. If you're looking to grow a business in Canada, you certainly can expect to hire Canadians. Another great one that you can select for the plan is to hire co-ops. And again, we can assist you in making introductions for how to connect with certain schools to get co-op students. And, there's organizations that work with the government to get you funding if you're going to be hiring co-op students in certain programs. So, all of that stuff, when it comes time to it, we're happy to help with making introductions and try to make the path as smooth as possible for you. But it does require us to kind of get a better understanding of each of your businesses and where you are in your launch and expansion and growth, and then kind of determine what next steps would be. This is the referral can take a couple of weeks. The LMIA itself takes a couple of weeks, and then the work permit gets processed. And again, it's meant to be processed in about 2 weeks. It is meant to be something that is consistent with the high-skilled, high-wage processing. However, we are seeing that sometimes they can take about a month or two to be processed. And then so I will stop here for, actually, what I'll do quickly here is just, so these are the types of ways in which we can help. We can certainly help from an immigration perspective. We'll do an assessment. We prepare the applications. We file it. We provide ongoing support. My colleagues in business law can assist with incorporation. We can provide employment support, tax support, and probably, a host of other things that you might need, which would be specific to your business. We can chat on that kind of further. if you require further assistance. But there is my contact details as well for you all, so that's up there. I know we've got about 10 minutes, so I'll stop here and open up the floor for questions. But for Ayan, I note that you said you've joined late, and how and in which categories. You can get a copy of the slide deck, and you can review, and it outlines kind of what we chatted about for the 40 minutes prior to you joining. And then if you have questions, we can chat further. So I'll open it up for questions. Sorry, Zohaib, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on there, Ayan, you can look forward to the slides and the video link as well for the recording. And then any questions you may have for that, you can always reach out to Zohra directly or to us to connect you with.
So, I mean, I guess while you all are kind of formulating some questions in the last couple of minutes here, I will say that, you know, things are tightening up for Canada. You know, the programs are being more strict. They are being more selective in terms of who can come and who can launch their business in Canada. So you just want to keep that in mind and make sure that, you know, you have strong business plans and you're willing to really put the time and effort into preparing a very robust application. A lot of people, you know, will want to kind of just throw in kind of generic information, but, you know, that's really not going to give you the highest chance of success. So just keep that in mind. And I think that will, you know, help go a long way. So Mohammed Sherjil, go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, I think you might have cut out there, Mohammed. I just heard yes, sister, but nothing beyond that.
I think there's some audio problems. We can
Oh,
move
I can hear you. I can hear you. Yep.
No, that was Zohaib talking.
Oh.
I was going to say, Mohammed, you might want to check your audio. We'll come back to you again. Imran, if you want to ask your question.
Imran, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Zohra. Couple of questions circling back to startups.
Sure.
So the VCs or angels are limited to 10 letters of support. Now, you also mentioned that the letter of support is for each project, right? And each project can have up to 5 families of people who are willing to invest in it and work in it.
No. So each organization can issue 10 letters of support. That letter of support can support up to 5 founders of each business. And then each one of those founders can bring their spouse and dependent children.
Right,
Now,
that's what I meant.
The people who are in the business are not meant to be investors, and they're not meant to be passive. They are people who are actually involved in the day-to-day of the business.
Right, okay. And can you give us an idea of the average investment that immigration is going to be looking for? Because, you know, it has to be realistic. So it's not like, you know.
Yeah. So the angels, there are requirements. So it's on the IRCC website. If you take a quick look at the requirements for a startup. So the angels have to invest $75K. And I believe the VCs are investing 150 or 250. I have to double check. So IRCC has determined that those are sufficient amounts, but realistically, it depends on your business. Some businesses can't do anything with 75 grand, whereas others might be more successful. And in instances where the angel is doing 75 grand, the founders might be putting in, you know, 75 grand to match or something like that. So there's no minimum amount, and IRCC has not provided any guidance to that regard. It varies very much individualized and specific.
But in your experience?
I work with people who are launching a small IT company to those who are opening up a greenhouse. So it really varies on, I can't give a specific number, Imran. Again, like I said, I think it might be worthwhile for us to connect offline. And once we have a better understanding of your business, we can, perhaps suggest an amount. But ultimately what it comes down to is you prepare a business plan. These are all the things that you're going to need. This is the cost for each of those. And then it makes sense that your investment would match that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Zohra.
Yeah, no problem. No, you cannot add a startup founder at a later date. Once the letter is issued, it's issued. If your co-founders have come to Canada and gotten the visa, you would be considering other options. For example, the intercompany transfer or the GTS LMIA.
Zohra, can we take Mohammed Sharji's question? You joined the queue.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for the disconnection.
That's okay. No.
So
that's
I
fine.
wanted to know that if we have already clientele in Canada, does it impact the ICT if we want to go for it?
If you're already here in Canada, like you're here as a visitor, for example.
No, I have a clientele, like I'm already doing business with the Canadian companies.
Okay.
So how much does it help in having the ICT? And I also have the Canadian visa as a visit visa. Does it help as well or not?
Yeah, for sure. Having Canadian clients is absolutely helpful. It demonstrates the legitimacy of your business, absolutely. But you do still have to have the 2 foreign entities outside of Canada before you can consider the intercompany transfer.
We already have it.
Great.
So that's not a problem.
Let's connect.
Secondly,
Go ahead.
Secondly, I wanted to know, is there any option to have a quick PR? Like if somebody wants to.
That's what everybody wants, Mohammed. Everybody wants quick
I know. But there's some businesses that somebody can buy out and then they can get the PR quickly.
No, they can't. If you're looking to buy out a business, you're considering the PNP program, a provincial nominee program, and that's actually a 3 to 5 year program. It's much lengthier, actually.
That's long.
Yeah. And yes, Chayar, there is approximately 800 startups. However, what I can tell you is that there's a list of 80 startup organizations. I'd say probably a third of them are active. So in theory, yes, there could be 800. So you have to understand there's 80 organizations. They can issue 1 letter, which could support 5 founders. So 1 letter could technically support 5 founders, and you can do 10 of that. So each organization in theory can support 50 actual visas, 50 actual, permanent residents. And then you're looking at 80 organizations. But like I said, you're probably at absolute best, 20 to 25 of those are active. So you'd have to kind of reach out, do your due diligence, look at the website, see what each of those organizations are looking for. Like, for example, there are ones that are strictly focused on environmental things, and there's others that have, very specific things that they're looking for. So once you take a look at the designated organization's requirements, it'll help you to kind of narrow what you would be looking at. Ayan, the average cost I'd say is probably around $100,000 for incubation. Now it was closer to 40 before IRCC implemented this maximum of 10. So these organizations have had to increase their prices just so that most of them are not for profit. So they have increased the prices for the incubation, and it's per letter of support, from my understanding. But again, you'd have to connect with each incubator individually to confirm that. That's outside of kind of what we can confirm. That would be an agreement that you would enter into directly with the incubator. So we just have 2 minutes here, and I don't want to keep anybody beyond kind of the allotted time, but I have put my email address in the chat, and I'm absolutely more than happy to, have phone calls and chat on how KPMG can assist with, your expansion into Canada and what program may be best and what types of introductions and referrals we can do for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And I do look forward with chatting with at least some of you at a later date.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zohra. Firstly, thank you to you and your team for collaborating with us and having such an engaging session for our Pakistani businesses and entrepreneurs. We really found this session invaluable and very insightful, and I hope our audience actually did that too. So I look forward to sending the video link and your details and the slides you presented to all the people who registered. Anyone who did not register prior to this webinar, please send an email to myself also. Again, for people who joined late, I am the Trade and Development Officer at the Consulate General of Pakistan in Toronto. And I would love to invite everyone again to our regular monthly webinar series where we are aiming to actually foster an environment of trade and development between the two countries. And with that being said, I'll let you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, please look forward to my email with the link and the contact details. And Zohra, thank you again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll take care.
All right. Love us, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.